Hello.
Hi.
Hey, I'm awake.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I did a private party last night and I just smoked a joint and stayed up till 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh no.
It was nice when you just or can't go to sleep and you just so I ended up playing backgammon and losing.
Oh no.
But it was fun.
That's great.
So you can hear me.
Yep.
Good, good. How's the weather? Cold?
Yes, it's cold. It's about to rain here, I think.
Ouch. Well,
Yeah.
that'd be nice.
It's better than snow.
Yeah, so it's good to see you in person.
Yes, absolutely.
So, anyways, I'm ready when you are at any time, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all good. I have like a whole list of questions. I don't know if I'm gonna ask them all, but
Sure, sure. Sounds great.
all right. So my first one is what why did you get started in the music business? Who or what inspired you?
It was classical music, like the Meistersinger and Flying Dutchman Overture, and another one? The Rite of Spring and the New World Symphony. These were all classical music that I used to get up in the living room in front of my parents and their friends and pretend I was the conductor. And I would conduct all
Cool.
these classical music stuff. And then, and then, of course, I would hear some really cool music like uh, Cast Your Fate to the Wind by Vince Garibaldi. I can't remember his name, but that was one of my favorite piano songs to listen to. And uh, and then Del Shannon came out with Runaway. And of course, as soon as the Beatles hit Ed Sullivan, that was it for me. I wanted to be a Beatle. So, it started with classical music and then I worked it into Beatle music.
Cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
darn cool. Yeah. So I I noticed that you did recently a recording with the Dreamboats. How did that come
Oh, yeah.
about? And yeah, and and why particularly did you choose Late Bloomer to record with them?
Well, Late Bloomer received 31,000 views on YouTube. So that's a pretty good chunk.
Yes, I would
And
say
so
so.
a lot of people love that song. Harry Nielsen loved it, and Eric Carmen, and a lot of people like that song. So um, I met the Dreamboats in January, and they completely blew me away. They are total showmen. They're sweethearts. They're really just fun and really nice guys. And they don't just sit there and sing and play. They move around the stage and jump around and do all these great movements, and they're just a really entertaining band. And they're my favorite, and they're like the Beatles to me. They're just really really nice guys. So I asked them to join me at the Grammy Museum to do a book signing and have live music. And they came and we did Late Bloomer, and that's how that came about.
Super cool. Yeah, I totally I totally when I watched it, I totally got your assessment with it totally was kind of Beatles, but it was fun.
Good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the topic of that song, what inspired you to compose and record late when we're in 1988?
Let's see. I At that point in time, I was a truck driver because I got divorced in what year was that? 83. I got divorced, and my wife took my kids and moved to Arizona. So I wasn't waking up every morning to my kids anymore. And then at the same time, the Turtles were trying to save money. We used to have two piano players. I mean, a synthesizer guy on one side of the stage playing all the strings and horns and synthesizer. And I was on the other side of the stage playing the Hammond B3 and piano and Wurlitzer. But they couldn't afford two piano players anymore. So they asked me to learn all the horn, strings, synthesizer, and piano. So I had to play both. And my chops were down because I was stressed out getting divorced. So so I went to a rehearsal with the Turtles, and I couldn't play the parts. I was fumbling. So they said, Andy, we love you, but sorry, we can't use you. So at the same time that happened, my wife took the kids to Arizona. So it was a real down time for me, being depressed, not being in the Turtles anymore, and getting divorced. So that was very tough. But the Turtles still used me on recording sessions and television shows. We did the March of Dimes with Jeff Skunk Baxter from the Doobies and Steely Dan and Davy Johnstone from Elton John. And I did all the music for Strawberry Shortcake.
Yep, I saw
and
that in your book.
Joe and G.I. Joe and the Care Bears. And also Peter and the Magic Egg was a Easter Bunny cartoon featuring Ray Bolger, the straw man from The Wizard of Oz. So he was 79 years old, and Flo and Eddie and I went over to his house, and he sat down next to me and he says, do you want to know what it was like to be in The Wizard of Oz? It was just a very chilling, amazing time in my life, sitting next to Ray Bolger. So it really was a lot of fun.
That's super cool. That is super cool. Well, since you mentioned Flo and Eddie, you had mentioned that one of your favorite piano parts was on Flo and Eddie's Rebecca. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I absolutely love that song. So
that's a cover tune. I forgot the original artist, but Flo and Eddie really liked that song. And that piano part, I love it. It was a really wonderful part. And what's a funny story, we were at a studio called Haji. It was a remote recording truck in the alley, and they have a camera in the studio, and you would go into an alley into the truck and listen to the music in the studio. But so the engineer made a mistake. We recorded a song called Zane Fournier, and it was just a weird song that was never released, and it had a very strange piano part. So when we started to record Rebecca, the engineer forgot to fast forward the tape to an open spot to record a new song, and he recorded over Zane Fournier. So when we listen to the playback, we hear Zane Fournier instead of Rebecca. So that was kind of a funny situation.
That sounds interesting.
Really, my favorite piano part with Flo and Eddie and the Turtles is on the Moving Targets album, and it's called The Best Possible Me. And I created the piano part, da, 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 da. And I was so honored that Alan McMillan, he did the strings and the horns. He actually copied my piano part verbatim, exactly what I was doing on the piano. He did with the violins and the horns and everything. So it was an honor. That is my favorite song, Rebecca and Best Possible Me. And of course,
That
Keep
sounds
It
great.
Warm. Yeah, Keep It Warm was a really good song too on the Moving Targets album. And every time we did that live and I started that piano part, the audience would cheer and everything. So it was very cool. Very cool.
That's super cool. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed that you had mentioned that you had worked on the Grammys with Little Richard a little bit in your book. But what was that experience like for you?
Oh, that was the best moment in my life. We got a phone call back in 1975 or 73. The drummer from the Turtles called me up and said, this guy named Bumps Blackwell, who produced and co-wrote Tutti Frutti, Good Golly Miss Molly, Rip It Up, all the Little Richard hit records. He was Little Richard's partner and manager. So Craig, the drummer, called me up and said, we're leaving tomorrow morning at the airport to play with Little Richard. They needed an organ player. So we played this gig in Hershey, Pennsylvania, about 60,000 people in this huge stadium. And Little Richard came out and they freaked me out. I was amazed at his energy and his excitement. And he would jump around the stage. And so eventually we went to Australia. We did a whole United States tour. And then I was invited to play with him at the Grammys. And Chuck Berry and Little Richard were to play their hit records at the Grammys, and they changed the lyrics. Instead of Tutti Frutti, Rudy, it would be Al Green, he's clean, and Barry White, take it away. So they used the nominees' names in the hit records of Little Richard and Chuck Berry. So the rehearsal was a small, tiny room in the back of the theater with an upright piano. And it was just Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and me, just the three of us, rehearsing their hit records. And I was blown away because the whole reason I became a musician was the Beatles. And Paul McCartney idolized Little Richard, and John Lennon idolized Chuck Berry. So it was like a full circle. Here I am working with the Beatles idols. So that was like one of the most exciting times in my life, for sure.
That's awesome. That is super cool. Let me see, what else did I write down here? All right. So how and why did you join the Turtles? What was your favorite album to do with them?
Okay. I was finishing the tour with Little Richard. It was called Richard Nader's Rock and Roll Revival. And we took a tour bus, and there were three white guys, my friend Craig, the drummer, the BJ, the guitar player, and myself. We were the only three white guys on the tour. Everybody else was black. Little Richard, Chuck Berry, the Five Satins, Bo Diddley, Diana Ross, all these black artists. So it was an amazing tour. And what was your question, real quick, because I was getting to it?
Yeah, how and why did you join the Turtles? What was your favorite album to do with them?
Oh, okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
we went to a recording studio in Topanga Canyon. It was called Cherokee, and that is the same 4-track studio that Ricky Don't Lose That Number and a lot of great hits were recorded there. So my job was to play the organ overdub on this movie they made called Rock and Roll Revival. And I was just doing the organ overdubs to make it sound richer, for the movie. And at the same studio, the Turtles, Flo and Eddie, they were there doing a cartoon, an X-rated cartoon that they wrote called.
Yeah.
It was called Dirty Duck.
Yep, I've watched
and
that before.
Oh yeah, and that was also it was called Cheat. Anyway, so they were recording that there, and their engineer Bruce Robb was one of the engineers at Cherokee Studios, and he played the keyboard parts on Dirty Duck. And they asked him to go on the road and tour, and he says, I can't because I'm an engineer in the studio. I can't go. So I was there in the studio, and they came up to me and they heard me playing the organ and all that, and they said, would you be interested in joining the Turtles? And I said yes, and the rest is history. That was 1973. So, and of course, my favorite album is Moving Targets. That's my favorite album. It's like the comedian Richard Lewis. One day I drove a limo and I was picking up celebrities for an event, and Richard Lewis was one of the celebrities, and we were talking in the limo, and he said, Moving Targets is his Sgt. Pepper. It's his favorite Turtle record. So that was very cool.
That's awesome. That's super awesome. All right, so let's see here. I had another question about, if I can actually, all right. Let's see here. So I know you guys did a series of shows during the early to mid 70s with the Grandmothers. How did that band and that tour come about?
That was very interesting. This guy named Scooby, he was the Musicians Union representative. And in 1968 and 69 and 70, he was in Hollywood. And so, we became friends, and he started to get me, gigs in these nightclubs and everything. And Jimmy Carl Black, the Indian of the group with Frank Zappa and the Mothers, he called up Scooby and he says, I want to start a band. And Scooby recommended me. So Jimmy Carl Black and Roy Estrada, the bass player with the Mothers, came over to my house, and I had my harpsichord and I played them a bunch of my originals, and they loved it, and we started the band. And when the band started and we started playing gigs, Frank Zappa called up Jimmy Carl Black and he says, I'm doing a movie called 200 Motels, and I want you to be in it. So Jimmy and I took the VW bus to the rehearsal, and Flo and Eddie were at the rehearsal because they're in the movie as well. In fact, they sing the background vocals on Lonesome Cowboy Bert, the song that Jimmy sang in the movie. So I met Flo and Eddie at that rehearsal. And then, of course, right after that is when I did that organ overdub. And then they hired me. So that's how all that came about.
That's super interesting. Yeah, actually, Lonesome Cowboy Bert was one of the first songs that I heard that was a Zappa-related song.
Yeah, I used to play drums on that song when we did it live.
That's cool.
Anytime Jimmy Carl Black got up to sing in front, I got on the drums. So
nice.
in Geronimo Black, I played guitar, drums, and keyboards.
Yep. I know I've been waiting to hear some of the Geronimo Black stuff
Oh, it's
that
all
you've
on.
released. I haven't heard it quite yet.
If you go to YouTube and Google Geronimo Black, you'll hear everything. It's all online.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also wanted to ask you because I discovered you through your Johnny Farfisa recordings.
Oh,
I know
wow.
you'd mentioned a little bit about your first band, The Individuals, but I also noticed that you had recorded with bands such as Euphorian Railway and the Tokays. Can you tell me a little bit more about those kind of last two bands?
Absolutely. Before the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan, I had a surf band in New York. We did surf music, all the, Pipeline and Miserlou and all the surf songs. And then the Beatles out, and of course I switched to rock and roll. With and at high school, I was and the drummer Sandy and the guitar player, and we would go back to my house every day after school, and we would rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and we formed the Individuals. But the Tokays was another band before the Individuals, with different members of the band. But so we recorded all these demos in New Rochelle, New York, in a 2-track studio, and we did a bunch of the Johnny Farfisa and the Individuals, and the Euphorian Railway was another band after the Individuals, and we also had another band called the Boys in Dutch. Well, the guitar player had to go to college, so we got another guitar player, and that was the Boys in Dutch. But that was, we won all the Battle of the Bands, all the contests in New York. We won them all. We were first place. We were great. And the name Johnny Farfisa was given to me by a record company owner, Moxie Records, and they specialize in garage band, underground garage band music. So he asked me, do I have any demos from the 60s? And I played him the stuff, and he loved it. And he says, let's put out a record, but let's call it Johnny Farfisa, like Johnny Rotten. But I played the Farfisa organ. So he thought of the name Johnny Farfisa. And then later on, one of the songs on this Johnny Farfisa EP, it was a paper sleeve vinyl EP with flunks. And I started to Google stuff, about 3 years ago, about 5 years ago. I Googled Johnny Farfisa to see what would pop up. And a band in Belgium was on stage performing this song I wrote called She's Gone Away, exactly like the record, exactly like my recording. So I was blown away, and I got a hold of them and I said, hey, it's Johnny Farfisa. I love what you did. And they said, we know a guy in California that has a magazine called Ugly Things. And it's all about garage band stuff and all about the obscure 60s stuff. And so he did a wonderful interview with me in his magazine. And he was friends with a record company in Spain called Munster Records. So they signed me to do 2 albums, a Johnny Farfisa album and a Geronimo Black album. So the Johnny Farfisa album was all the stuff I recorded in 1965, including the Euphorian Railway and the Tokays. So anyhow, all that stuff is on vinyl, they and the Geronimo Black is vinyl and a CD. So it was very cool to have all this stuff reissued.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. I've played actually some of the songs on my radio show.
Great.
And I absolutely love it. And I forget even how I discovered it actually. Yep.
That's wonderful.
Yep. Yeah, so more people around me have heard you.
That's great. That's great.
Thanks. So, what has been your favorite solo song of yours and why?
My favorite solo song of mine. Well, I love that instrumental called "She's Gone Away" by the Individuals, and I also love "Late Bloomer." I really like a song called "The Mooch," which
Yep.
was 1977. And that's a great song. See, I can't sing lead, but I can sure as hell write really great songs with amazing lead vocals. So every time I recorded one of my songs, I would get a singer to sing them for me. So on The Mooch, I got this guy named Bill Oz, who was incredible. And Late Bloomer, I got this guy named Steve Diaro. And so all these songs. And then there's another wonderful song called Hell of a Day. And that's a really great song. And a guy named Mark Avnet sang lead on that one. So it's just a bunch of songs I wrote over the years that I really love. Those are my favorites. And another one called Chikang Kong, Cheekangkong, Chikang Kong. And the reason of that title is when I performed in 1968 with Dr. John the Night Tripper, all of his music had these rhythmical phrases, gree gree gumbo ya ya, hey now, all these rhythmical stuff that was in his music. So I first moved to California in '68. I was sitting in front of the Hollywood sign looking over the valley, and it was cloudy and smoggy. And I actually wrote the song Chikang Kong right there on that hill. The clouds have come to cover the earth. The skies come to witness the birth of a man who was seen alone in a world of his own. And I wrote that at 20 years old. So that one turned out to be a good record. So those are my favorite: Chikang Kong, The Mooch, Late Bloomer. What was it? There was another one, I forgot the name. Anyway, those are really good. Oh, another one called My Little Angel, which is a ballad about when my girlfriend broke up with me, and I cried all night and wrote the song and put it on her doorstep and knocked on the door, and she played it, and then she cried on the answer phone and said, "How beautiful, I'm so thankful, thank you so much, I love you." But she broke up with me, and that was the end of that. But there are some really good songs that I wrote that I'm very proud of.
I can absolutely tell. From what I've heard, I've been very highly impressed with them. So I think that's super cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let's see here. Are there any new projects that you're working on that maybe my listeners or even just for myself should know about?
Well, basically, I'm really just trying to promote the book, and I'm trying to get enough interest to be able to go on to a late night TV show, like Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or Colbert or any one of those. And but I already sent them a book, and they never responded. The thing is, they don't want to hear from the artist. They want to hear from management or a huge PR company like Rogers and Cowan. I think that's what they're called. Anyhow, they charge $6,000 a month for 3 months to promote you, to get you on late night TV or to get you stuff, to promote the book. So that's my dilemma right now. I'm trying to get a PR, somebody to promote me, but I don't have $25,000 to do it, so that's where I'm stuck right now. But I sold like 500 books on Facebook. That's been the only form of advertising. And the book is expensive. It's $60 because Amazon self-publishing books, they're very expensive when they print them. So I had to, make the price so I get a decent royalty on them. But a lot of people say, it's too expensive. I can't afford it. Can you go with Kindle or do an audiobook? And I keep on saying, the whole purpose of this coffee table 2.5 pound book is you can open it up anywhere in the book and enjoy it, because it's chronological sort of, but it's got great stories and really great pictures. And all the reviews on Amazon have been good, except for one idiot who interviewed me on her radio show, and then she got angry at me for me tagging her on a post. So she went to Amazon and gave me a horrible review saying it's the worst thing she's ever seen. I never played with any of those people. I'm full of shit. But that was the only bad review I got, because it was revenge. It was spiteful. But, you run into that. You never can tell who you're going to meet. But everybody else's reviews were wonderful, really good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I plan on putting a review for your book on Amazon here pretty soon, because it's just like I am all about it, and one of the things that I feel like a lot of my listeners are too, is that I like to promote, and I also like to, buy directly from the artist and support their work. It's definitely, it's definitely, I see how hard you've worked. I see how hard, other people I've had the opportunity to talk to, how hard they've worked, and, even how hard I've worked with being able to run my particular radio show, and just try with that it's important. And
Yeah.
and absolutely, again, really love the book.
Yeah, I love it too.
Yeah, speaking of the book, I actually have a question about that. Can you tell my listeners more about your new book? What can readers expect from it, and where can they get a copy?
Okay. Well, it's very easy to find me if you Google the most famous musician you've never heard of. Watch this. Okay, Google, the most famous musician you never heard of. I'll try it again. Okay, Google, the most famous musician you've never heard of. It'll work.
According to Amazon.com, Andy Cahan is truly the most famous musician you've never heard of.
So you can just Google the most famous musician, and it pops right up, and you click on it, and it'll take you to the sample chapter of the book that my editor put together on his website called Best Classic Bands. So you get to read a chapter about Harry Nilsson and Ringo Starr and Joe Walsh and Timothy Leary in that chapter. So it was really a lot of fun building the book. A lot of fun.
I can tell.
I had to scan thousands of posters and flyers and contracts and letters and album covers and all that stuff. So it took a long time to build the book. My whole living room floor was manila folders this one was Geronimo Black, that's Flo and Eddie, that's Little Richard, so each one of those, and then I had every picture tells a story. So instead of typing my book, I just got on my cell phone and I look at a picture of me at the Grammys and I would start talking about it. And it turned into text and I sent it to my editor and he made it fluid, like really, like a book.
Yeah.
So that's how I built my book.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of
All
fun.
right. So it's saying that the meeting that we're on is going to end in about like 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So I just have one more question to ask you. For my listeners,
Sure.
Where can they access your music and find out more about your music?
Well, I have I have a YouTube. Actually, it's YouTube. Yeah, it's a weird name. I'm sorry. It's called Snarful Hamana. SNARFEL Snarful Hamana. And if you type that in, it'll take you to my YouTube thing. And then I also joined DistroKid. It's a service you pay them like $20 for the year, and they put you on all the platforms. iTunes, iMusic, Amazon, Spotify, Pandora, Weezer. So all my music is online. And if like for instance, if you Google say Andy Cahan and the Dreamboats at the Grammy Museum on YouTube. If you Google that, then you'll hear us play Late Bloomer at the Grammy Museum. So all my music is Googleable. You can Google all my music.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me today, Andy. Appreciate you.
I'm really honored. Thank you so much.
It's an honor to interview you.
Yeah, and then I'll promote the interview and put it on social media and do the whole thing.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to see if my station can post it either on their official YouTube, or if I can post it to mine, and then I'll use some snippets for my radio show on December 30th.
Oh, okay. Is that when it airs?
Yep, that's when I'm planning on airing it.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Wonderful.
All right. Take care.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very, very much. I'm honored to be on this show.
Absolutely. Wonderful. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure too. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.